All right. Looks like we're diving into some serious self-improvement territory today, huh?
Yeah, definitely hitting that reset button.
Our listener sent in, a blog post from Tickled Think. It's called, let me see, 14 life-changing tips for resetting your life.
Ooh, that sounds pretty comprehensive.
It is. And you know what I like about it? It's not just like some random list of tips.
Yeah.
The author actually talks about their own experience with needing a total life reboot.
Hmm.
Kind of makes it feel more, well, real, I guess.
I get that. Like they've actually been there, so it's not just like theoretical advice.
Exactly. It feels more relatable. Okay, so one thing that really struck me right off the bat was how much they emphasized self-reflection, but not just the usual, like, look in the mirror stuff.
Oh, so like deeper than that.
Way deeper. They talk about creating this whole, like, life inventory, where you list your values, passions, even those big regrets we all have.
Wow, that sounds pretty intense. But I guess it makes sense, right? You got to know where you're starting from before you can figure out where you want to go.
Right. Like taking stock of your internal landscape, like before you start redecorating, you need to see what you're working with. And speaking of redecorating, they then move into goal setting, but again, with a twist.
What's the twist?
Well, they don't just say set smart goals like every other self-help book out there. Yeah. They have this whole thing about attaching a why statement to each goal.
A why statement.
Yeah, so like it's not enough to say I want to lose 10 pounds. You got to dig deeper and ask, why is that important to me? What will it allow me to do or feel?
Oh, I see. So it's about connecting with the deeper motivation behind the goal. That makes sense.
Right. And I was even thinking about this in relation to my own goals. Like, I've been wanting to learn Spanish forever, but I always give up after a few weeks.
I feel that. Language learning is tough.
It is.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, maybe if I actually wrote down WHY I want to learn Spanish, like maybe to connect with my family better or to travel more freely, it'd give me that extra push when I don't feel like studying.
Yeah, it's like tapping into that inner drive that'll keep you going when the initial excitement fades.
Totally. Now, I know our listener is all about actionable steps and not getting overwhelmed, which is something the author gets too. They even talk about feeling paralyzed by a massive to-do list.
Oh, been there. So what's their solution?
They have this strategy they call the domino effect.
Domino effect. Okay, I'm intrigued.
It's pretty simple, actually. Instead of trying to tackle your entire to-do list at once, you pick one tiny task, something that takes like 5 minutes tops. The idea is that by completing that one small thing, you create momentum, like knocking over the first domino, which then makes it easier to tackle the next item and the next, and so on.
Ah, I see. It's like breaking down those mental barriers and building confidence with small wins.
Exactly. And that can be so powerful when you're feeling stuck. It reminds me of that saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Oh, I love that.
Me too. It's such a good reminder that even tiny actions can have a ripple effect and lead to bigger changes over time. And the author doesn't shy away from the emotional side of change either. There's a whole section on embracing vulnerability, which I found really insightful.
Yeah, vulnerability can be a tough one, but it's so important. What's their take on it?
Well, they actually talk about how they used to see vulnerability as a weakness,
Mm.
like always trying to project this image of perfection. But then they realized that it was actually holding them back from forming real connections and ultimately from being truly happy.
It's so true, though, right? Trying to be perfect all the time is exhausting and honestly kind of isolating.
Totally. They even quote Brene Brown in this section, who says, and I'm paraphrasing here, vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage. Truth and courage aren't always comfortable, but they're never weakness.
That's a powerful quote.
It is. And I think for our listener who's already thinking about making big life changes, this message of embracing vulnerability is super important. It's like giving themselves permission to be imperfect, to make mistakes,
Yeah.
to ask for help when they need it.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that none of us have it all figured out, and it's okay to be a work in progress.
So true. And that leads us to another big theme in this blog post.
Self-love.
Ooh, self-love. It's a buzzword these days, but such an important concept.
It is. And sometimes it's presented in this like overly simplistic, Instagrammable way?
Totally, like just buy this face mask and suddenly you'll love yourself.
Exactly. But the author approaches it with a lot more nuance, thankfully. They describe self-love as, and I'm quoting here, an ongoing journey of self-discovery and acceptance.
So it's not a destination, it's a process.
Exactly. It's not something you achieve overnight. It's something you cultivate over time.
And I think that's such an important distinction because it takes the pressure off, right? You don't have to be perfect at self-love. You just have to keep showing up for yourself. Yeah, I love that.
And one thing that really helps, on that journey, the authors suggest changing up your routine.
Oh, that's interesting. Like, how so?
Well, they talk about how getting stuck in a rut can totally drain your motivation, It's like your brain goes on autopilot and you just stop noticing things. So shaking things up, even in little ways, can help you see the world with fresh eyes.
Okay, so not like a total life overhaul, but just introducing some, what, novelty into our day-to-day.
Exactly. They even suggest simple things, trying a new coffee shop or taking a different route to work.
Oh, I like that. Or even like listening to a new genre of music, just something to kind of shake things up.
Right. Or even rearranging your furniture, anything to shift your perspective.
Yeah, I love that. It's like those small tweaks
Yeah.
that can have a surprisingly big impact on your energy.
Totally. And then, oh, this part was good. They talk about letting go of toxic habits, which,
Mhm.
let's be honest, we all struggle with those sometimes.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But I'm curious, what's their take on it?
Well, it's not just about cut out sugar or stop watching TV, it's about understanding the why behind those habits. Like, what need are we trying to meet with those behaviors?
Oh, so it's like peeling back the layers of the onion,
Yeah.
right? Got to figure out what's going on beneath the surface.
Exactly. Like someone who overeats, right?
Right.
Maybe it seems like it's just about willpower, but maybe they're actually using food to deal with stress or loneliness.
So it's about addressing the root cause, not just the symptom.
Exactly. And that's where, self-awareness and self-compassion come in. Once you figure out what's really going on, you can start finding healthier ways to cope.
Makes sense. It's like recognizing that our habits, even the bad ones, they're often serving some purpose.
Yeah. Even if that purpose isn't actually helping us
Okay.
anymore. And it ties back to that vulnerability thing, right? It takes courage to admit, hey, this isn't working for me anymore.
Yeah, that's so true. And speaking of courage, I was struck by how much the author talked about forgiveness.
Forgiveness, as in forgiving others.
Well, that too, but also forgiving ourselves. Like letting go of those past mistakes that we keep beating ourselves up for.
Oh, that's huge. It's so easy to hold on to those. But I guess it's like carrying around extra baggage.
Exactly. And they have this great exercise where you write a letter to the person you need to forgive,
Hmm.
or even to yourself.
A letter.
Yeah, like you pour out all your hurt and anger,
Hmm.
but you also acknowledge the lessons learned and the possibility of healing. It's about releasing that negativity.
Wow, that's powerful. I'm definitely going to try that.
Me too. And you know what else they talk about? Cultivating gratitude, which can be tough, especially when you're trying to make big changes.
Yeah, because you're so focused on what you're trying to change, right?
Exactly. But they make a really good point that focusing on the good stuff, even when things are tough, can actually shift your whole perspective. Like, it helps you see things in a more positive light.
It's like training your brain to look for the good, right?
Yeah. And they give some practical tips, too, like keeping a gratitude journal or writing thank you notes.
Oh, the gratitude journal thing. I've heard that before. Maybe I should actually try it this time.
It's worth a shot. I think the key is just to make it a habit, even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
Okay, I can commit to that. Oh, and another thing. This one is so important. Setting healthy boundaries.
Yes. Boundaries, that's a big one, especially for people pleasers, I think.
Oh, tell me about it. The author actually talks about how they used to say yes to everything, even when they didn't want to, and how it totally burned them out.
Oh, I feel that. It's like you're constantly putting everyone else's needs before your own.
Right, and then you end up feeling resentful and exhausted. But the thing is, setting boundaries isn't about being selfish, it's about protecting your own well-being.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that you can't pour from an empty cup, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they have some good advice about this too, like learning to say no gracefully and being clear about your limits.
Yeah, and not feeling guilty about it.
Right. And it's not just about boundaries with others, it's also about boundaries with ourselves.
With ourselves. What do you mean by that?
Well, like negative self-talk, or procrastination, or pushing ourselves too hard. All those things that we do that aren't actually good for us.
Oh, I see. So it's about treating ourselves with the same kindness and respect we would offer to a friend.
Exactly. And that brings us to I think, the biggest challenge of all, self-love.
Yeah, that's the one we keep coming back to. What does the author say about it this time?
Well, they're very honest about their own struggles with self-acceptance, and they remind us that it's not a straight line, There are going to be ups and downs.
So true. I think it's easy to get discouraged when you have a setback.
Totally. But the author emphasizes that self-love is a choice. Like it's a conscious decision we have to make every single day.
It's like showing up for yourself even when you don't feel like it.
Exactly. And especially when things are tough, right?
Mm.
That's when we need self-love the most.
Yeah, it's like being your own best friend, right? Giving yourself that same support you'd give to someone you care about.
Exactly. And you know what else? It's super important to celebrate the small wins along the way.
Oh, I love that. It's so easy to get caught up in the big picture that you forget to acknowledge the progress you're making.
Totally. The author talks about how tempting it is to try to do everything at once, like make these huge changes overnight.
Yeah, like a complete overhaul.
Right. But they say it's actually much better to take small steps, which is honestly way more sustainable.
Makes sense.
And then celebrating those small wins, no matter how tiny they seem, can really help you stay motivated.
It's like giving yourself those little pats on the back along the way, like, hey, good job, you're doing it.
Exactly. You're acknowledging your efforts and building momentum.
This has been such a great deep dive. It's really highlighted how, like, multifaceted change.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not just about external stuff. It's about that inner transformation, too.
It's about self-awareness, vulnerability, healthy boundaries, self-love, all of it. It's about the whole journey, not just the end goal.
And what I find so inspiring is that, like, the author isn't just preaching at us. They're sharing their own struggles and triumphs, which makes it all feel so much more, like, real and attainable.
Totally. It's a good reminder that we all have the power to reset our lives, to break free from those old patterns, and create something new, something that actually aligns with who we are and who we want to be.
Oh, and before we wrap up, there's one thing I want to circle back to.
What's that?
We were talking earlier about setting boundaries with ourselves.
Hmm.
And I'm curious, like, how do you see that playing out in the context of a personal reset?
That's a really good question. I think it's about recognizing that a reset isn't about like pushing yourself to the limit or trying to achieve some, perfect version of yourself.
Yeah.
It's more about creating a sustainable path forward, one that honors your needs and limitations.
So not about becoming a completely different person, but more like a more authentic version of yourself.
Exactly. And that might mean setting boundaries around like how much you take on or how much you expose yourself to, or even how much you let outside pressures influence you.
Ooh, that's good. It's about creating that space for growth, but in a way that feels safe and supportive.
And remember, you don't have to do this alone. Like the author talks about how important it is to reach out for support, whether it's from friends and family or a therapist, or even just a supportive community.
Yeah, having that support system can make all the difference.
Totally. And asking for help, it's not a weakness, it's a sign of strength. It takes courage to admit that you need a hand, and it can open up so many new possibilities.
This deep dive has been so insightful. We've covered so much, from self-reflection and goal setting to vulnerability and self-love.
It's been a great reminder that resetting your life is a journey, not a destination, and that it's an ongoing process of like growth and evolution.
So, what resonated most with you from this deep dive? What small step can you take today to start your own reset journey? Maybe it's creating that life inventory, or trying the domino effect, or even just writing down one thing you're grateful for. Remember, even the smallest actions can have a ripple effect. Thanks for joining us.